Good morning. Is everybody like delirious from your first night of camp? Yeah, man. The only thing worse than the first night of camp is the last. That's when kids are like, okay, now let's break the rules, you know? But man, we actually just finished our camp last week. So Sunday was our last day of camp, and then I came straight here. So I've been camping, man, you know? And but I love youth camp. It's what happened last night is just so special to my heart. You know, been doing this for so long, and I firmly believe that youth camp is so vital to a young, you know, I think sometimes youth camp gets like a bad name, like, oh, it's just a youth camp high, blah, blah, blah. But what happens during these weeks sticks with kids for years. I mean, you heard me tell my testimony last night, and I can remember even being in like those worst places like the mental institution and stuff, and sitting in that mental institution and remembering moments as a kid where God did something in my life at camp. So thank you for bringing your kids here to camp, because it's really an eternity thing. And if you stay in this game long enough, which I hope you do, you'll have moments where 5, 6, 10 years later, some kid will text you and be like, man, thank you so much for all that you did. They probably won't thank you now, but they will. They will later, you know? So... all right, if you have a Bible or a phone or whatever, like YouVersion contacted us. Like he said that like it was no big deal. But if you have YouVersion on your phone, you can go to that. Turn in your Bibles to 2 Kings chapter 5. And I don't want to take too much of your time today. I love what Pastor Chris was talking about with the titles. You know, just to prepare you, you know, a lot of times you come in here into these leadership sessions. There's probably some of you in this room that you're like, why am I even in this leadership session? I don't know what I'm doing here. You're here for a reason, and God has something for you. And, you know, I know there's people in the room with titles, but in my opinion, I think titles are just the lowest form of authority. I think your authority comes through other things. There's a lot of guys with big titles and nobody following them. You know what I mean? And I firmly believe that who you are and what you're anointed with is on you today, and God's preparing you for it. You know, when I started in youth ministry 15 years ago, I started in a church of 50 people. Nobody wanted to hire me because I started right out of I went from the mental institution to Bible school and did a year of Bible school, and I was like, okay, I'm ready to be a youth pastor. So that's not a very good resume. You know what I mean? Like I sent out my resume, and I'm like, pastors are like, so where were you a year ago? Mental ward. Let me teach your kids, you know? So I started in this church of 50. They couldn't pay me. That was the reason they hired me, because they were like, you want to work for free? You know, if you really want to do something with your life, if you're really called, you'll do it for free. I still question that in my life today. Like, would I do what I'm doing now for free? And, you know, so they hired me as their youth pastor. I worked nights at Home Depot. I started at Home Depot at 9 o'clock at night, and I got off at 5 in the morning, and I became a youth pastor for the day. And that's how I started in youth ministry a long time ago. And I remember still now looking back, I always used to think, man, I got to be in full-time ministry. I gotta work my way. I got to move up. And I mean this with all of my heart. That time as a young youth pastor with I started with 5 kids. My first youth ministry had 5 kids. And I'll never forget, I was so fired up. And I'm like, man, we're going to change the world together. And we're in a little basement. And they're like, how are we going to change the world? And I'm like, next week, invite all your friends. And one little kid in the room, he looks around the room and he goes, they're already here. Like, I had the 5 dorkiest kids in the whole city. And that was my first youth group. But it was some of the most rewarding times for me. And the biggest thing looking back on my life that I can tell you, and I mean it with all my heart, my anointing was the same when my paycheck said Home Depot as it is now when it says Trinity Church. Does that make sense? And so I really want you to understand your anointing doesn't change because of where you're paid from. You're here for a reason. You're impacting heaven today, this week, and I want you to carry that authority over your life, where you're walking in an authority of, God has called me to this. God has called me to. Where's the gentleman I met? He's been here 17 years. God's called you to this, and you're a general. I don't know where you're paid from, but your anointing is for this generation, and I'm so thankful for you. What a general you are. So anyway, enough of that. As Pastor Chris said, I'm now shifting in my ministry. I've been called to plant churches in the inner city. My goal is to figure out how to make a self-sustaining church in the inner city, because there's really hardly any. And so I'm trying to build a model where it's self-sustaining in the inner city. You know, and I shifted out of my youth ministry about 12 weeks ago, and that was a hard shift for me to leave this really, massive youth ministry. And I remember driving away and going, what in the world am I doing? You know, like I'm leaving everything I know, you know, as this youth pastor. And I show up to this church and we have 15 people in this church. And I'm like, what am I doing? But I knew that God had called me to something, because a year ago I started going into the neighborhoods in this area. And there's a little girl that changed my life. Her name's Deja. She's my daughter now. She's 5. She's my spiritual daughter, but she's 5. But she came to me about a year ago when I was wandering the neighborhoods. And she said to me, Pastor Jeremy. I said, yeah, baby. And she said, kids are making fun of me. And I said, why? And she said, well, because they know I don't have a daddy. And I said, well, how do they know that? And her mom was on a local talk show, or not a local, national talk show, where they do the whole "you're not the father" thing. And she found on national TV that she wasn't, the guy that she thought was her dad wasn't. And so all the kids were making fun of her. And she came to me and she said, do you mind if I tell them you're my daddy? And oh my gosh, I just started weeping. And I said, yeah, you can. And she said, well, what do I do when they ask why you're white? And I just said, just tell them I chose you, baby. You just tell them I chose you. And so because of her and the life that it's just, I knew my heart began to break for Oak Cliff, for the inner cities. And I began to weep every time I'd leave these neighborhoods over these kids. And I knew God was calling me there. And so I'm saying that to you today to say, if you really want to make this long term in your life, find what you weep over, find what breaks your heart, and begin to go there and serve with everything you have. And that's how you get into the long term. It's been that way with youth ministry for me for a while. And by the way, I'm not like completely giving up youth ministry. I'm just giving up the day-to-day stuff. I have a young man that's been serving with me for 5 years. It's his time. But I'm still going to be there helping him and stuff. But I know my call now. But I've made it 15 years. And a lot of people are like, how do you make it 15 years? And I always tell people, I think I failed my way most of the way here. I don't know if you ever feel that way, you know. But just about every Thursday morning, I used to write my resignation letter. You know, you just have those Wednesday nights where you're like, next morning you're like, I quit. And that's the whole resignation letter. I quit. And you have these failures of nights. I remember when I resigned youth ministry a few years ago, one little girl got up and she was trying to be nice and she was just like, Pastor Jeremy, I'm going to miss you so much. I said, I'm going to miss you too. And she said, I just want to thank you. And I was getting ready for something good. She's like, I just want to thank you. And I said, thank me for what? You know, because you just want to hear good stuff, you know? And so she was like, you know, you've taught us so much. And I'm like, what did I teach you? And she's like, because of you, we know everything not to do in this ministry. We're going to do something great. And I'm like, wait a minute, what? Where are you going with this? What do you mean you don't know? You know? And so a lot of times you just feel like, what is going on? And it's just so hard. And you have these moments where you just fight. And I don't title my messages a lot that, you know, in my life, because I don't know why. I'm not a good title guy. But today I just felt like I wanted to say, you know, I want to talk to the wounded warriors. I want to talk, because I feel like we're in a battle, and I want to talk to the wounded warriors. I feel like, and don't take this wrong, please understand. So I had to move this up a little bit. You got Big Booty Judy up here preaching and put the pulpit a foot from the stage, man. I'm going to bump into stuff. Where was I at? Huh? Wounded warriors. And I like having fun with y'all. Thank you for having fun with me. I just love y'all. It's just so good. But yeah, I mean, just don't take this the wrong way, and you don't have to feel like Jeremy needs healing. But I feel like I'm not alone in this. But a lot of my ministry, and even still, you know, I'm talking recent. I feel wounded. I feel alone. I feel beat up. You know, and I'm not saying I don't love what I do. That's the weird the weird dynamic that comes in ministry, because I love everything that I do, but there's moments where you're just like, gosh, I'm beat up, I'm tired, and I don't understand this, you know? My son is a football player. I am not a good athlete. As you heard my testimony, I did a lot of drugs as a kid. That kind of takes out all football practice, you know? But my son, for some reason, has turned into this really, really good athlete. Like, I'm telling you, like, you don't even know how, I mean, this kid is a good wide receiver. He plays on an elite football team in Texas, which is crazy to be on an elite football team. He's only 8 years old, but it feels weird for me because this elite football team, there's actually like, they're chosen kids to play on this team. So it's me, and then there's like 4 other guys on the team that they're ex-NFL players, like rooting their kids on. So they're like, telling their kids how to play football, and I'm like, just catch the ball. Like, I don't know what to, you know. They're like, footwork, hip work. And I'm like, yeah, dance. I don't know what they're telling them to do, you know. I was not a good football player. I have one football injury. It's right here. I would show it to you, but I want to show you my pearly white legs. But it's a huge scar right here on my leg, and it's my football injury. I literally got it. I went to a big high school football game when I was a kid, and I was walking up the bleachers with my hot dog, and yeah. And I literally felt like, if you fall down the stairs, that's kind of embarrassing. If you fall up the stairs and you have this massive hot dog, you know, and it wasn't just like a small fall. Like, I fell to where I was bleeding, y'all. Like, I have a huge scar to this day, and it was like one of those laugh screams where you're like, ah! You know, it just hurt. And then you look, and the $5 hot dog you just bought, you know what I mean? It's just all, and you're like, oh. And I remember looking around, and even the football team was looking at me like, what is he doing up there, you know? That's my football injury. But my son, he's really good. He's really good. And I was watching practice the other day, and then we went to a game. They play like 3 games on a Saturday or whatever, and so he was not having a good day. He was not catching the ball. I was blaming the quarterback, okay? Kale kept dropping the ball, and I'm like, that quarterback better start throwing better. He's missing my kid. And I'm like, wait, quit being that guy, you know? But anyway, so my son comes to me. He's like, Dad, I'm so frustrated. I can't catch the ball. And my son's very competitive, so he's like crying. I'm like, why are you crying? It's a stupid game. Like, I'm not even, you know. And he's like, I can't catch the ball. And so, but every time the coach would yell, Coach Wash, he'd be like, Kale, get back to the line. And every time my son would step up, and they even have like proper footing. Did you know that in football? But he'd get up and he'd get to the line. And then he'd fail again. And then so finally I started learning what the coach was doing. So he missed a touchdown catch, and he comes back and he's, And I said, Kale, get back to the line. Get back to the line. And I think it taught something in me, because there's so many failures in my life, and I see so many people in ministry that they drop the ball once and they never get back to the line. They never step back in. It's like your first failure is your last. Or you mess up so big that you think your ministry's over. I've been there. And you just feel like it's the last moment in your life, and you don't get back to the line. The reason I'm still in ministry today is not because I've been perfect, not because I've built great things, not because of all this stuff. The reason I'm still in ministry today is because I got back to the line. Step back in. Do you understand what I'm saying? Look at your neighbor and say, step back in. Now Naaman, this is chapter 5 in 2 Kings. Now Naaman was a commander of the great army of King Aram, and he was a great man in the sight of his master, highly regarded, because through him the Lord had given victory to Aram. He was a valiant soldier, but he had leprosy. Now the bands of raiders from Aram had gone out and had taken captive a young girl from Israel, and she served Naaman's wife. She said to her mistress, if only my master would see the prophet who is in Samaria, he would cure him of this leprosy. Naaman went to his master and told him what the girl of Israel said. By all means, go, the king of Aram replied. I will send a letter to the king of Israel. So Naaman left, taking with him 10 talents of silver, 6,000 shekels, and of gold, and 10 sets of clothing. And the letter that he took to the king of Israel read, "With this letter, I'm sending you my servant Naaman to you so that you may cure him of leprosy." As the king got this message, this letter, he tore his robes and he said, "Am I God? Can I kill and bring back to life? Why does this fellow send someone to me to be cured of his leprosy? See how he is trying to pick a quarrel with me?" The king thought somebody was just trying to fight. He thought somebody was trying to mess with him because Naaman was so messed up. Like, what are you trying to do? Fight with me with your messed up warrior? When Elijah, the man of God, heard that the king of Israel had torn his robes, he sent him this message: "Why have you torn your robes? Have the man not come to me, and have the man come to me, and he will know that there is a prophet in Israel." So Naaman went with his horses and chariots, and he stopped at the door of Elisha the prophet's house. Elisha sent a messenger to say to him, "Go wash yourself 7 times in the Jordan, and your flesh will be restored, and you will be cleansed." But Naaman went away angry. And he said, "I thought that he would surely come out to me and stand and call on the name of the Lord of God and wave his hands over the spot and cure my leprosy." That always hits me right there. You ever been in a moment where you expected God to do something, but it doesn't work out the way you thought it was going to? That's where he's at. He gets angry because I thought it was just going to be this quick healing. Now you're telling me to go do something? Are not Abana and Pharpar, the rivers of Damascus, better than all the waters of Israel? Could I not wash in them and be cleansed? So he turned and went off in rage. He was angry. Naaman's servants went to him and said, "My father, if the prophet has told you to do some great thing, would you have not done it? How much more then when he tells you, wash and be cleansed?" So he went down and he dipped himself in the Jordan 7 times as the man of God had told him, and his flesh was restored and became clean as that of a young boy. So here's this warrior, and he's got leprosy. Leprosy is a very, very visible wound. In fact, as a warrior, he's this mighty, mighty warrior, but when he comes home from war, he can't even hug his own family. He doesn't even know what human touch is like because it was so contagious that if you were to touch it, it would just leap onto the next person. So there's this warrior that I'm looking at in this story that's fighting for his king. He's fighting for he does everything that he's told to do, but yet he's wounded. Yet he's got a disease and he's alone and he feels like there's nobody around him that can help him. And then this young servant girl comes and says, "Listen, you can go. There's a prophet that can heal you." So Naaman gets all his money and his clothes and he goes and he makes this long journey and he gets there. And like I said, the king sends him to Elijah's door. Now here he is knocking on the door and the prophet never comes. How frustrating is that? Where he begins to knock on the door and the prophet never shows up. And I think to myself so many times in my own ministry where I've been knocking on doors and I'm like, "God, where are you? What are you doing?" And see, what Naaman didn't understand is that God didn't have a plan of some immediate change for him. There was a process that he had to walk through. And a lot of us, especially as we become super Christians or professional Christians or whatever, we forget that we're still in the process. You understand what I'm saying? There's no pedestal up here. There's no pedestal in Christianity. There's nothing to stand on and say, "I've made it." There's a process that you're in. And many, many, many times in your ministry, in your life, in your walk, you don't understand the process. He didn't get it. Hello. Is that me? Oh, no, that's him. Okay, good. Thank goodness it wasn't me. No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it like that. It's just bad as a speaker. It's not bad as a guest. So welcome to YFN. Make booty Judy. There's been processes in my life that I haven't understood. And Naaman didn't understand this process. He was so angry that it just didn't immediately happen. He's like, what am I doing here? Why did I come all the way here? There's cleaner rivers where I'm from. You got to understand, the Jordan was looked at as this dirty, nasty, like muddy river, like Texas muddy river. That's the Jordan. The Jordan is this dirty. Why am I going to get in there? I've got these open sores. What is God telling me to do to get in there and get in this water and do this? And here's the thing. Before I go any further, I just feel like I need to say this. It is okay as a leader to say you're wounded. It is okay as a leader to say, you know what? I've got some things in my life that I need to deal with. Do not walk through your life without getting help for the wounds that you have. I'm not saying get up on stage and tell everybody or whatever else, but find people, find Jesus, get help. Do what you got to do. It's not a bad thing to be a Christian leader and say, I'm wounded. In fact, about 12 years in my life, 12 years ago in my life, I wish somebody would have told me that. I was moving up in my youth ministry world, but I didn't know how to deal with it. You know, I just came out of drugs and all this other stuff, and here I am in this youth pastor, and nobody knew how, I didn't have like a spiritual father or anybody to tell me how to do it. I had got married, and I had this, my first daughter, my daughter was born, and so I'm trying to be this youth pastor guy, you know what I mean? And so finally, after about 2 years at this church, I come home, and my wife says, hey, I'm leaving you. And I'm like, what? She said, I'm leaving you. I said, why? And she said, because you're fake. And I didn't marry somebody who's fake. And you're dealing with lust in your life, and you're dealing with things in your life that you're afraid to tell anybody because you think you're some big shot youth pastor. And until you get your life straight and your heart straight, I will not be living in this home. And so I went back to my pastor, and I said, I think I need some help. My wife's leaving me. I think my marriage is in trouble. I don't know what to do. And my pastor wasn't a man at the time that really knew how to handle something like that. And he said, you're fired, pack your stuff, and get out of the church. And as I look back on that situation, one of my best friends, he's a youth pastor in California. When I went through this situation, he called me after he heard that I was fired, and he said, I'm mad at you. And I said, what do you mean you're mad at me? You're supposed to be like loving me right now. I'm in pain. He said, no, I'm mad at you. And I said, why? And he said, for the last 2 years, I've called you and asked you how you're doing. And for the last 2 years, you've just said good. And he said, you've lied to me. And here's the thing, you know, as God, thank goodness, I walked through it. My marriage was restored, and God put me back into ministry. And I promised myself from that moment on, I would never be fake in ministry again, which sometimes gets me in trouble. You know what I mean? But I've promised myself, I'm just going to be me. I'm not going to try to preach like anybody else. I'm just going to be me. And if you don't like me, it's okay. I don't need anything. I just want to serve Jesus with everything that I have. I know you understand what I'm saying? But if I would have just said, hey, I'm wounded, I need help. But here's the thing, even through that, I got back in. Even with that, I was like, you know what, I'm going to get back up, and I'm going to get back in. Just 3 months ago, I can't tell you the details of the story, but me and my family, there was an attack on my family, and me and my family went through one of the most hardest moments in my entire life. I've been through some hard moments, but 4 months ago, I wanted to kill people because of the attack on my family. You're like, wait a minute, you're not supposed to talk about that. You're here at camp preaching. Listen, I get it. I'm sitting here telling you these things because I get it. I'm in it with you. And there's battles that we walk through that we just don't want to get back up. And that was one of those moments. I remember walking into a staff meeting at Trinity Church, and they began to sing Good, Good Father. And they began to sing, you're never going to let me down. You're never going to let me down. You're never going to, and all the white people are like, oh, yeah, let me down. And I'm sitting in the back, and I'm like, yes, you will. I mean, I went out in the lobby, and I went outside because I didn't want anybody to hear me, and I started to scream at God, and I said, you did let me down. You will let me down. You can't say that to me. I cannot declare that because you will let me down. I've been let down, and I want to quit. And I called my wife, and I said, I'm done. I asked God to protect my family. if I gave my life to him, and now there's this attack and I don't want anything to do with it. And I remember God speaking to me right there, and he said, you read the stories and you celebrate them. You celebrate Bartimaeus seeing. You celebrate Lazarus being raised from the dead. You celebrate all these things. But in the middle of the story, don't you think they wanted to quit? You read the story of Job and you're like, wow, he got double everything. Don't you think he wanted to quit when he lost his family? And God began to speak to me and he said, I won't let you down. You just haven't read the end of your story yet. But people will read the end of your story and they'll begin to celebrate. You see, there's a journey and there's a process. Just stick with me, Jeremy. Stick with me. And that's when this message really began to stick to my heart. Step back in, Jeremy. Just get back in. If you don't know what you're doing, if you're hurt and you don't understand it, if you have wounds that people can see and you're like, people can see all this stuff on my life, I don't even know. Step back in and lead and let God use you, because as you begin to step back in, God will begin to change your life. You see, the process is something we don't understand. Here's what he did not understand. When Naaman said, why am I going to the Jordan? He saw a dirty river. What God saw was a place of new beginnings. You see, the Jordan River is a special river. It's the river that the Israelites crossed to go into their promise. It's the river that Jesus was baptized in to start his ministry. The Jordan River means something to God. It's not a dirty place to God. It's the place where things start. And so what Naaman didn't understand was, what, I can go to cleaner rivers, I can go to cleaner places, but Naaman didn't understand what God was doing in his life. What God was saying is, I'm sending you there to start something. There's a new place there, and you don't see it, but I see it. A lot of times in your life, you don't see what God's doing. You just see a dirty, ugly, messed up river, and that's the place where God starts things. So Naaman goes, and he's angry, and he begins to step in once. And he gets back out. Nothing changes. Twice, steps back in. Nothing changes. 3 times. That's about when I would quit. How many of you today, you're on number 3? And you're just frustrated. 4 times. Nothing changes. Why is nothing changing? I keep serving God. My dreams haven't come yet. There's still pain. I thought God said this was what my life and my ministry was going to look like. Why isn't it happening yet? Maybe you're just on number 4. And you got to have enough faith to believe that you're on number 4 and step back in. 5, 6. 6 is one that really messes with me. I feel like a lot of people quit on number 6. I feel like I see a lot of people that quit right before their greatest moment. It just happened to me. I had a staff member not too long ago that quit, and a week after they quit, I got a phone call that would have changed their life. A national leader wanted to hire them and move them over. And I'm like, I can't send them. They literally quit on number 6. And I feel like a lot of us quit on number 6. But then Naaman steps in on number 7. And that's the weird thing with God a lot. A lot of times with humans, we want to see progress. We want to see, well, at least one sore went away on number 4. At least something happened on number 4. But God, no. He said, be faithful to me and step back in that 7th time. Why the 7th time? Because the number 7 means what? It means the end of things. See, Naaman did not see the process. He didn't know number 7. He didn't know the Jordan River, but he was, and that's the weird thing. You look at the story and he's like, he wasn't even perfect. He was upset about this. He was angry about this. And I think a lot of times we think because we get angry about a situation that God's not going to bless us. But I think it's exactly what Pastor Chris said. We're going to go through our emotions, but it's good and faithful servant. And as long as you're faithful to the call on your life and you continue to step back in and you continue to do things, God's going to open doors for you and your dreams will come and things will happen. And maybe they won't look exactly what you think they look like. But you got to keep stepping back in. You know, as a 24-year-old youth pastor, I had a lot of dreams. but I didn't know everything that God wanted for my life. Does that make sense? And there's some things that I did and I pushed towards because I thought they were my dreams. And when I got to them, I'm like, wow, that wasn't even what I thought it would be. You know? I mean, no offense to the Christian television stations. I love them, and I know there's a lot of people on them. I still do a show once in a while, but that was a real big goal of mine. Like, I want to be on Christian television because I want to change the world. And I'm like, oh, my goodness. So I finally get on national Christian television, and I tell my story, and nothing happens. I got an email from my mom. Good job. And I'm like, I thought that would change the world. And I thought, well, I don't watch this show unless I'm on it, you know? So maybe I'm sorry. You understand what I'm saying? So I'm here today just simply to say, step back in. Do not quit. You don't understand the process. You don't know what's going on. And there's some pain, and there's some hurt, and there's sometimes some dreams that you're like, why aren't they the dreams that I thought they would be? But I promise you this, everything that I thought I wanted for my ministry and for my life and for what God had for me, a lot of it He didn't give. A lot of the stuff that I wanted as a young man, I don't see. But guess what? I'm thankful for it. I'm thankful He didn't give me what I wanted, because now I'm seeing He had a way better plan. He knew exactly what He designed me for. He knew exactly what He had in store for me. And I live a life that I love. Are there painful moments? Absolutely. I just told you one about 4 months ago. But the only thing I know to do is what my son's coach yells at him: get back to the line. Step back in. Because what if you're on number 6? What if your end suddenly is tomorrow? And you're like, man, I don't want to get back in this game. I don't want to step back in this water. I'm tired. It's dirty in here. This ministry's dirty. I don't understand it. This is hard. I can't fight through this anymore. I'm tired of the dirt in this river. But wait, that's where God starts things. You just don't see the process. I'm so tired of seeing the younger generation quit. I'm so tired of seeing the younger generation think that they've got to hide all their wounds. Get healing so you can be the strongest leader you can be. You know, when I was on the streets, a lot of times, I always wondered why, like, the higher up drug dealers and stuff would, like, tell me things that I didn't need to know. And as I remember now, it's because they wanted to have something on me. You see, it's a tactic of the devil to have something on you. And it's okay to be a wounded warrior if you're getting help, if you're stepping back in, if you're saying, I'm going to fight through this. It's way, way better to get help than to get found out. And Chris will tell you, Chris is one of my best friends. There's been moments that I've sat in his office and just apologized after a 4-hour rant about what I'm going through. But you need that in your life. You understand that? And you need to step back in. Please don't quit. I'm getting older. I was so proud of Jordan, the guy that I'm handing the baton to, because he's been with me for 5 years. He's been faithful. And I get to hand it to more like a little brother, but he's a little brother to me. But in all reality, there's too many young people quitting, and there's batons that are just hanging in the air with nobody to hand it to, because there's a lot of young people that refuse to step back in. Why am I doing this? I thought it was just going to be easy. I thought I'd be traveling and speaking tomorrow, you know? In all reality, I'm in a place in my life, I get to travel and speak, and a lot of people are like, wow, that's great. I'm wondering if that's what God has for me. It's really hard for me to leave Oak Cliff. Do you understand what I'm saying? Step back in and understand who you are. God has way bigger dreams for you than what you think they may be. But don't leave this room this morning a wounded warrior. Amen? I'm going to move this because I want to pray with you. I don't know if it's everybody, but would you stand with me? I don't know if there's a piano player, but I feel more spiritual sometimes with that. Yeah, please understand my heart behind this, but I really want you to understand, because I don't ever want anybody to ever think, well, I've made it to a place that I can't be honest. Do you understand what I'm saying? But I'm in a large church. I have 12 staff members that work for me. I have this new church planning thing. I have a large youth ministry that I oversee. I have a ministry, where I travel some, and so I have all these things. And just 4 months ago, I had to admit that I wanted to quit and I needed to step back in. I had to admit that I was wounded. I came to Chris. I came to some other people. He knows the details, because I was like, I'm broken. I don't know if I can get back in this. I don't know if I can get back in this. And when I read this story, I thought, my goodness, what if this is number 6? Every day when I wake up, I think about myself dying. That's kind of weird, right? But I think about myself dying, and I don't ever want to go to the grave with regrets. I meet a lot of older people. They're like, man, I just wish I would have. And I don't ever want to get back to, I don't want to die at hopefully 90 and be like, man, I wish I would have stepped back in. Wish I wouldn't have quit. When I looked last night at these young people that came forward, this is a generation that needs you to fight. Even through the anger of the process, whatever it is, this is a generation that desperately needs you to fight. They need you to not quit. They need you to step back in. Usually at this moment in my message, I'd be preaching hard, yelling, because that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to pump you up. I'm intentionally keeping my voice soft because I believe that tonight or today, it's camp, man. You just lose track, don't you? You just feel like. I believe Jesus is bringing a peace to some of you, because that peace is what's going to give you the courage to step back into the dirty water, knowing that he's got something for you. Because let's admit it, ministry's dirty, man. What if I would have quit 4 months ago? Sunday night, I was in the hospital till 5 in the morning. One of my young ladies from Oak Cliff tried to take her life. Her mom told her to kill herself. When I got to her house, she was convulsing and in cardiac arrest. And she could barely keep her eyes straight. And I just kept looking at her. I said, baby, look at me, look at me, look at me. Don't die on me. This was just Sunday. I'm sorry, Saturday. Saturday night. Losing track of my time with all these camps. I said, baby, don't. And she said, don't let me go. Don't let me go, Jeremy. I don't want to go. She knew what was going to happen. She's tried to kill herself before. And I said, listen, they're going to send you to the hospital, and then they're going to send you to the mental institution. But I want to promise you something. She said, what? I said, I'll be there. Sweet, I'm not leaving you. And I thought to myself, if I would have quit 4 months ago, there would have been no father in her life to hold her head up and say, you're going to make it. And I can't do this alone. I need you to continue to step back in. And so if that's you in this room, and you're like, yeah, it's been tough. Got some wounds. would you just come so I could pray with you? Would you just come so I could pray with you?